Alright guys, so in this video I'm going to show you how to get started with variables. So variables are a very simple concept in programming. They're actually very important to understand. And all variables are just containers that hold a piece of information. You can think of them like containers, boxes, lockers, storage locations, and all they do is just hold information for us temporarily or permanently. Now typically they hold it throughout the life cycle of our application and they help keep track of state. So you might, for example, use some kind of web application that takes in your information, and there's a chance that they're actually using variables to store your data temporarily. At some point, they may want to save all that data into something more persistent, such as a file or a database. Variables are only stored in memory during the runtime of the program. Once you exit the program, they're completely gone. So let's go ahead and create a new file. Let's just call this variables.rs. And I'm going to go ahead and create the main function. Like I said, these things are just things that you're going to have to do over and over again until we actually get to the functions part. Once we actually talk about functions, all the stuff is going to make so much more sense. But for now, as you're following along, just make sure every single time you create a new file, you type fn and then main parentheses and then curly braces. And inside these curly braces, we're simply going to go ahead and just do we're going to go ahead and declare a variable now. So we're going to go ahead and use the let keyword to declare a variable. And I'm going to call this age, and I'm going to give it a value. And we're using the equals operator, which means assignment. That basically means you're assigning a variable a value. And I'm going to set the value of 22. Okay, so now if I want to print out this value now to display to the user, we can do print ln, and I can just simply do age, curly braces, comma, age. So this is kind of like formatting our string, formatting our text, so that way age right over here, this variable, is going to replace this parentheses right over here. Think of it like that. So let's go ahead and try to compile it using rustc. So let's do rustc source variables.rs. So I'm passing in the relative path, and inside my PowerShell I type the tab and it's going to auto-complete it for me. That's why it's showing up like this, but you can just manually do rustc source variables.rs. And to run it, we're just going to type ./variables.exe and then age 22. Just like that. Perfect. Okay, so just to recap, all we did so far was we declared one variable. We called it age. You can name your variables whatever you want. And we assigned age the value of 22. And on line 4, we're using the print line. Now remember, like I said, don't worry about functions right now. Once we get to functions, you're going to understand the terminology better. But I just want you to think of the print ln. This is a function, but all it's responsible for is outputting data or outputting whatever we want. And now if you want to output variables, we need to use the curly braces over here inside these quotes. Now, right over here, you're probably wondering, well, what are these quotes over here? This is called a string. Okay, now strings are just a sequence of characters. So for example, age, age, colon, space. And over here, we're formatting our string, so that way age, the value of age, is going to replace these curly braces right over here. It's that simple. Now, one thing that I should mention in Rust is that variables by default are actually immutable. What that means is once you give it a value, you cannot reassign that variable again. Unlike other languages, you can actually assign the variable a new value, but in Rust, you can't. So for example, if I try to change it to 23, and if I save, and if I try to compile the program again, it's going to give me an error. Cannot assign twice to immutable variable age. Okay, now Rust actually does this intentionally because it helps with concurrency, and sometimes you might want to actually have it this way to prevent certain issues from happening in your program. Now there are sometimes where you might need to mutate your variables, so Rust also allows you to opt out of immutable variables, and it's very easy. So if you want to have a mutable variable, and when I say mutable and immutable, basically all immutable means is just you cannot change it, okay? So it's kind of like mutating. You can actually change it, you can mutate it. Immutable means you can't change it, you can't update it. So if we want a mutable variable, a variable that we want to be able to change, we just add the mut keyword in front of it. So we're going to go ahead and use the let keyword. And I'm going to type the mut keyword. And I'm going to type name. And now I'm going to assign this a string. So I'm going to type Anson, semicolon. There we go. So now if I want to print out the string over here, I can use the println function. and we're going to just say name, and we're going to use the curly braces and comma, and I'm going to basically just pass in that name variable over here, and that's going to replace the curly braces, so we can have a formatted string. So let's go ahead and run our code. And you can see that it says variable does not need to be mutable. The reason why it's saying this is because we aren't actually changing it, but don't worry. We can still run our code. There we go. But now let's actually mutate our variable. And let's give it the value of Jack. And let's print that out again. And like I said, if we want to print out our variable values, we need to make sure we have this curly brace inside wrap between the quotations. So that way we can actually give the replacement for our value. So now over here, the new value of name is going to replace the curly brace over here. So if I run my rustc command and compile, and if I do variables.exe, you can see now we have Anson as our name, but we mutated and we have it as Jack now. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. And like I said, variables are just containers that hold pieces of information that we can use at some point. All right, now there are also something called constants. Okay, now constants are always immutable. You can never, ever mutate a constant. If you've programmed in other languages before, such as JavaScript, you can declare a constant using the const keyword. In Rust, it's the same thing. So if I want to declare some kind of variable that should never ever change no matter what, we use the const keyword. And typically by convention, you want to name your constants, the names should be capitalized. So for example, we can say multiplier. So this might be some kind of tax rate, for example, and we can give it the value of 5.2. Now we should also give our multiplier variable a specific data type. Now I know in this video we've only gone over 2 data types right now. We've gone over numbers as well as strings. Okay, in the next video we're going to talk all about data types, so don't worry. But right now 5.2 is actually a floating point, so we're going to have to do colon and then F, and we'll do 32. Okay, so right over here I declared a variable called multiplier, all in caps, and I specified the data type F32, which is a float. Okay, and colon F32, and then we assigned this variable the value of 5.2, and now I can simply just print this out to the console. So let's do that, multiplier, and let's compile our code. So rustc source variables.rs, and let's run variables.exe. You can see we have 5.2. Now watch, if I try to assign multiplier a value again, so let's assign it to 4.5, you're going to see that we actually can't do that. It's going to give us an error. Cannot assign to this expression because multiplier itself is a constant. Okay, and they're always immutable no matter what. So just to recap everything, variables are just containers, boxes, some kind of storage, and they hold pieces of information for us. So that way at some point later on in our program, we can reference them and we can do whatever we want with them. In this video, all we've done so far was we declared a couple of variables. We declared an immutable variable, let age. Okay, we assigned the value of 22. And then we declared a mutable variable, and we assigned it the value of a string, data type, Anson. Okay, strings are wrapped in quotes. They're just a sequence of characters. And right over here, I'm printing out the string. And then I mutated our name variable by assigning it a new value. And then we also touched up on constants as well. And you can see that we weren't able to assign a new value to our constant. And that's pretty much it for variables. So hopefully all this made sense. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.